Good morning, sir.
Morning. How are you, Akshay?
Fine, sir.
Sorry about not answering your question as I was leaving.
Okay, sir.
No, because I didn't want to keep those lab people waiting.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So I left in a hurry because actually they were basically doing me a favor. So
Good morning, sir.
good morning. So two more participants. Shall we get going?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So yesterday I was doing the second of the Milesians, and the importance of doing the Milesians is basically so that we understand that um, there is a thing called, you know, naturalist explanations instead of mythological explanations, and how these naturalist explanations actually um, come to the how they actually are a foundation, how they are a foundation of the modern period. Okay, that is the sciences of the modern period. That is what I was talking to you about yesterday. And for those of you who didn't come for the meeting yesterday evening, I had told you, so let me quickly go through the what is in the syllabus. What we are actually doing is starting with the second unit, because if I don't start with the second unit, then the first unit is just dangling in thin air. Okay, it doesn't have any reference whatsoever. So first and foremost, one has to establish the idea of what the political is before we start looking at political theory, political philosophy, political thought. You can't look at these things without looking at what the political is. So the first unit actually says the differences between political theory, political philosophy, and political thought. And then it says interpretative theory. The Americans like to call it interpretive theory, so to speak, which isn't a wonderful way of saying things. I prefer the old syntax of the Brits. Uh, so you can't do that without first establishing what the political is. How did this come into being? So, I'm sorry. So, first and foremost, what we are doing, therefore, is that we are trying to establish the emergence of the political. Once we understand the emergence of the political, then we go to the second unit. The first unit, I'm sorry. And then we talk about the differences between political theory, political philosophy, and all that. And then we also talk about the interpretative theory. And the third unit actually is the syllabus, I'm afraid, is not extremely well constructed. Because when we go into the third unit, we are going straight into the church state controversy, which has to be seen not in those terms, actually, because at that time the state had still not come into being. It has to be seen as the imperium and sacerdotium controversy. But I'll get into that when I go to that. But what this unit misses out is the mention of the Renaissance and the Reformation, and specifically what Max Weber, the sociologist, calls the emergence of the Protestant ethic. He talks about the emergence of the Protestant ethic, and this is something that is missed out in the syllabus, because that is the connection between the old antiquity, you want to call it that, I have no problem. uh, Antiquity as in ancient Greece, not as in the whiskey. um, and so we basically are talking about um, uh, we are not talking about two very important developments. Everybody says we did the Renaissance in the uh, in school, and Reformation we did it in school. But the thing is, we have never done the far-reaching repercussions of these two things. And I'm sorry about that. There is absolutely no mention of the medieval period. And one has to look at the medieval period as well. Um, are you able to hear me? Mm,
Yes, sir.
no, my
Yes, sir.
video froze.
Yes, sir.
So I was just wondering if, anyway, so those things also have to be mentioned if we have to understand what constitutes the modern period. Okay, in European history, of course, the Europeans have for years and centuries actually peddled their history as the history of the world. Okay, and even the dating system of BC, which was before Christ, and AD, Anno Domini, uh, these things when are again in European dating system, and somehow they decided that they'll change it and make it non-Christian, but it doesn't change the Eurocentrism, because what did they do? They only changed BC to BCE, which is before the Common Era. And the Common Era, they said, begins after the death of Christ, which was Anno Domini. So, if we are looking at this, we just replace the terms, but we haven't replaced the Eurocentrism. If you really want to talk about a common era, the common era should perhaps, at the earliest, should start in the 17th century. Okay, it should start in the 17th century, because that is the time when colonialism of the European variety spread across the world. It's and Really speaking, it is the 18th and 19th centuries which I will believe to be the beginning of the common era. But otherwise, our dating system, by changing by changing it to anno from anno domini to um, common era, they haven't changed anything. It still is Eurocentric, and they would still like to believe that their history uh, is our history as well. It's the history of the world, which it isn't. Okay, we have distinct histories uh, in different parts of the world, not just India. Okay, you have an Egyptian civilization which flourished. Uh, you have the ancient Indian civilizations. There are at least two of them, and they flourished. And the we see different systems of philosophy in ancient India itself, all of which are cosmological but yet are different from each other in some way or the other. So all these nuances are lost when we start lumping them into one category of BCE and CE. Okay, but anyway, to come back to the point that I'm trying to make, uh, even if we have to understand European history properly, even if we have to understand how Europe became what it did as a power, then we basically need to understand the contribution made by the Renaissance and the Reformation and the Protestant ethic that was generated by the Reformation. And we also have to understand the medieval period, in which there are two things to be understood. One is the dominance of the church as an important institution, and the second is the existence, and even though it's not a domination on the same scale as that of the domination of the church, it is nevertheless a domination, and that is the domination of the European feudal guild. Okay, so we talk about a caste system that is also almost like a caste system. Okay, the European feudal guild. But I'll talk about that later. First and foremost, we need to establish this whole idea. It just didn't occur to me till Madame Padma asked me about, sir, what is the syllabus? What is the exam pattern? It didn't occur to me. I'm a bit of a, what should I say, slowpoke when it comes to these kind of things. I just start doing what I think I should be doing without giving any consideration whatsoever to the concerns of what people have. So if you have any concern, please stop me and ask me. Okay. Uh, Now that the I have spoken to you yesterday evening, uh, another point that was brought to my attention, uh, and it was also brought to me to my attention by N. Sunil, who said, "I am from Telugu medium. I understand this problem because I've been teaching in this particular university for quite some time now. And though I have had excursions, I went on lean to places like the Tata Institute of Social Sciences and all that. Despite that, I have uh, adequate experience to understand that the main catchment of Usmania University is basically students coming from a rural background, and also those who are uh, coming from, what should I say, from an economically backward background. Okay. Um, these are the only two things I'll acknowledge. I don't acknowledge caste. Caste has got nothing to do with anything. If you have faced discrimination, yes, okay, fine. But uh, unless we stop talking about it and actually do something about it, we're never ever going to get rid of this idea of caste. And you must understand that caste has mutated into a political variable now. It was once a cosmological variable when it was, in the case of ancient India, when it was Varna, then it mutated into a system of Jati, and the British gave it the name caste, and the word caste is not even English. Okay, it's actually a Portuguese word which basically means a closed group. Okay, and unfortunately, most of our information about caste and all these things is these days totally informed only by Ambedkar's perspective. And with due respect to the man, he's a great man and he did wonderful things. There is no doubt about that. But to believe that what he has written is beyond criticism of a constructive variety is absolutely wrong. Okay, the Ambedkar perspective does not do justice to what was the Varna system, but that's a different thing. Maybe I'll do it with you when I meet you separately uh, to discuss concepts, which is what I talked to you about yesterday. Anyway, so if you have a problem, this is the point that I want to make. If there's anybody who's experiencing a problem with the English language, if you are not able to, I'm using this whiteboard thing because writing things down makes things much better. See, the problem with these online classes is we are not connected. Okay, and these virtual connections are not virtual connections. It's like asking a doctor uh, to come online and say, okay, so what are your symptoms? Now, you must understand that you can have the same symptoms for different diseases. Okay, you don't have one set of symptoms for one disease. It isn't so. And sometimes we have what is called being asymptomatic, which is that you don't have symptoms, but you're carrying a disease. And I'm not talking about that in the case of COVID. Okay, I'm talking about it in the case of various kinds of diseases, heart disease. My father apparently suffered a silent heart attack, which we came to know some years later. Okay, so he had a heart attack. We didn't know that he had a heart attack. He seemed hale, hearty, and fine. But one ECG showed that he had a heart attack in the past. So they did another one to confirm, and yes, again that also showed. So you see, these are so being a doctor, if you're going to just sit across a Zoom call or any other call and say, I'm going to treat you, it is not a great thing. Ideally, we should all be in one classroom physically. I should be able to I should be able to see your faces and the reactions on your faces, and you should be able to see what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, and all that kind of thing. That is the ideal situation. Well, but right now we are not in that ideal situation, and I don't get to see any of you at all. All I see is your names, and that too I get to see three at a time. So right now I'm seeing Padma Navanand, Freshta Hakiki, and N. Sumanasri. And I don't know how many are in the meeting. There are 15 in the meeting. So the rest of you are not even visible to me, even as names. All right. So under those circumstances, it is very, very difficult for me to try and gauge your reactions, to try and understand how much of what I'm saying is making sense to you and how much of what I'm saying is not making sense to you. So I request you to kindly take on the responsibility of stopping me wherever you have a difficulty. I've been trying to ask you questions to break the monotony of my droning. You must have realized by now that I drone a lot. Okay, and I have told you that it produces two kinds of reactions. The first reaction it produces is trauma. People are traumatized by my lecture. Okay, and the other kind of a thing is the exact opposite of that, which is people fall asleep. That people tell me my voice has a soporific effect or makes people sleep. So any which way, neither of them is a desirable thing. So if you are not understanding something, and there is nothing wrong in sharing your problems, there is nothing wrong in sharing your problems. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect. I really, really am not perfect in any sense of the word. Okay. As far as my physique is concerned, it is like, like what should I say? A gargantuan distortion of an elephant. All right. What is perfect about me in that? There's nothing perfect about me. Do I know the whole subject? Okay. Can I hold forth and talk about everything that is there in political science. No, not just me. Nobody, no teacher of political science anywhere in the world can talk to you with authority over everything that we are doing in class. We are supposed to not doing in class. What we are supposed to know. Nobody knows everything. There are all limitations as human beings. There are all kinds of limitations on us, and I'm very, very sympathetic, very, very sympathetic to the idea that you people have come from a background which is working against you. In fact, I started an institute, and I started this in my house downstairs, and it is an institute I've named after my grandfather. It's called the AVR Institute of Education, because he was an educationist, a social worker, a social reformer. He did all these things. And he, despite being eligible to become a lecturer, preferred teaching students of a school because he said, unless there is school education, how can we have higher education? So something must be done at the level of the school. Okay, so he preferred teaching there for many years before the Nizam actually realized the contributions that he was making. He was awarded a medal and made the Secretary of Education, of all education. Okay, and so I thought I should follow in his footsteps. And when I sent a message to people, my students and my friends, my students in PG college, the message that I sent out is the classes are for free. Okay. Uh, I know I'm digressing, but I allow me to uh, indulge, or rather, just indulge me and allow me to tell this story properly so that you get to know what I want to say in the proper perspective. Uh, I sent messages saying that this is free of cost, and I needed to give it a hook. And I said it'll help you for your competitive exams, otherwise, students don't really come. Then I said it'll help you for your UGC JRF. And then I also said there is a remedial teaching component. And what I said is that the primary target of this particular institute that I'm starting is students who come from a rural background and from an economically deprived background, people who haven't had the access to the best education. Now, I don't know how many of you have given it a thought. Like I said, today, please indulge me and listen to me. Okay. Uh, how many of you have given a thought to this whole thing called the right to education? We have a supposed right to education. Kapil Sibal, when he was in charge of the HRD portfolio, which has now become education ministry, like in the good old days, uh, he said, we are going to make education a right, and they made it a right. Okay. Then they said every school has to have 30% supernumerary seats for students uh, who cannot pay fees. But people said, we are not going to implement this. It increases the workload of the teachers, and the teachers are going to ask us for more money. So there was this whole big thing for a month, Kapil Sibal trying to stand his ground, and the educational institution saying it is not our responsibility. If you want to give the education, give it in government schools and all this. And at the end of it, where is the right to education today? And why should we pay for a right? Please think about that. Do we pay for our right to life? Do we pay for any of our fundamental rights? To get them operationalized, do we have to pay? In order to practice our own religion, do we have to pay? We don't. None of the fundamental rights require us to pay. They are constitutional guarantees. And when you have added the right to education to that, why is it that people are being asked to pay? Why? And why are you approaching private institutions and saying, give extra seats? Isn't the government absolving itself of the responsibility that it has of providing the, what should I say, providing education to all people? And what is the sanctity of the age 14? At least till the age 14. Why? If you study till 14, you'll get jobs. You'll become managing director. Rajshekar Reddy in Andhra Pradesh, the then undivided Andhra Pradesh, talked about fee reimbursement. Okay, you go attend classes, I'll reimburse your fee. That doesn't happen. Fee reimbursement doesn't happen. So in educational institutions are least enthusiastic about taking people on this fee reimbursement thing, because we have so many other populist programs like distributing sheep and all those kind of things, that we don't have money for this very, very important activity. See, these days, Nehru is criticized for everything, and very wrongly. So, but if there is any development today, it is due to Nehru. You have to understand that. And all my friends who have gone to the US, especially to fix the Y2K bug, it's amazing. At one time, it was a part of our life, this particular phrase Y2K, and now nobody knows what Y2K is. Okay, so to fix this bug, so many people went abroad, and now they have all turned against India. India has a lousy system of education. And I tell them, stop. Where did you study and go? Because you went while you were somewhere in your 35 or 40 kind of range. Did you go and study in the US? No. It was your Indian education that took you to the US. And let me tell you, one of the reasons why Trump got trumped in the election is because that he's otherwise a very intelligent man. I don't know what went wrong with him towards the end. He started believing in this whole thing that America for Americans, which is the agenda of the rednecks, the neo-Nazis, and all those kind of people who exist there, skinheads, okay? And they are his support base. And it's ultimately the white supremacists who are his support base. So he strangled the visa system. As a result of which, what happened? As a result of which, American companies suffered. Because for all the glorified things that you hear about Harvard, Stanford, I've not been to Stanford, but I've been to Harvard, I've been to Yale, okay, Ivy League, I've been to Columbia, I've been to the University of Virginia, I've been to the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, I've been to the University of Connecticut in Stores. And if you look at all these places, you find people, the teaching faculty is also very, very ordinary. Very ordinary. All this happens, this big names happens because of the alumni. The alumni network is a very important thing. The Americans are most brilliant at marketing. They have, once somebody climbs to an important position, then he'll recruit a couple of more people from, uh, they'll recruit a couple of more people from their old school, as they call them in America. Even universities are called schools. So that's how the reputations have been built. And we also take great pride. Who's the uh, CEO of Adobe Systems? Shantanu Narayan. Yeah, Shantanu Narayan is my friend. Really, he's my friend. So, what is it for me? He studied here and went to the US to do his post graduation. He was an engineer here. He went and did his post graduation from the University of Ohio at Bowling Green and climbed his way. Okay, he must have worked hard, which is very good for him. And my idiot friends in my school group, they compiled a list of who are the Indians heading which company, and how somebody is heading the treasury in Britain. And then they say Indians are running the world. Are they Indians? Do they identify with you? Will they come to you? Talk to you? No, they won't. I'm sure if I meet Shantanu and say, "Hi Shantanu, do you remember me?" He might just say, "Ah, yeah, how are you? Fine, thanks." And he'll go off. He's least bothered. He's least bothered. So that's it. So why are we talking about all these things? And Nehru did do something for this country, but he failed in one aspect, which is he made higher educational institutions governmental, but he failed the to make the lower levels, the primary, the secondary, he failed to make them governmental. They should have been the responsibility of the government. Everybody should have gone. There should have, there should be no elitism. You know, America thrives on elitism. Harvard, Stanford, oh wow, Yale, oh great. Columbia, oh fantastic. Okay, go to Germany, go to Finland, go to Netherlands. Everybody gets education free of cost. Doesn't matter if you have money or you don't. And there are no elitist educational institutions. There are no elitist educational institutions there because they're all run by the government. And there is some kind of parity in the selection of the teachers at various levels so they get good education. Please remember that you are entitled. You are entitled, I'm repeating that. You're entitled to have a good education. It is your right. It is your constitutional right. So don't hide behind your fears. Please don't hide behind your fears. Please come out into the open and say, this is my problem. Please help or do something about it. Then I will also have the satisfaction of having done something. I'll also have the satisfaction of having taught. I didn't leave the Osmania University for one reason, because I thought here is where people need to be taught. I didn't want to go to some elitist universities. I've had lots of offers. Okay, not just in India. Ernesto Laclau, a very big name, he invited me to come to the University of Essex, and I declined. And I declined. So it is your right. Please do not hide behind your fears. If I may quote my favorite rock musician, Roger Waters, he once belonged to the band Pink Floyd, and they made great albums like The Dark Side of the Moon, then The Wall, and Final Cut, Animals, which was Waters' take on George Orwell's Animal Farm. These are all called concept albums. They're not just a bunch of songs like, with lyrics like, come on, make some noise, girls, rock your boys. It's not that kind of lyrics. Sorry. This Aishwarya keeps coming and disappearing. Okay. Anyway, so the thing that I'm trying to tell you is that The Wall is a very, very interesting album. If any of you have the time, you can search for the film film The Wall on YouTube, and you can watch it. It's a very depressing kind of a film because it's very dystopian, and but it is a film that has an amazing theme about how when we build different kinds of fears and anxieties, we tend to build metaphorical walls around ourselves. Okay, we isolate ourselves more and more from the people. So that is a metaphorical wall. You know, inferiority complex is one of the things. And I know for a fact that people who come from rural backgrounds, especially the boys, if they see girls who are speaking fluently in English, then they feel they, no, I don't want to show my ignorance of the English language and open my mouth. Nonsense. That's big nonsense. Please don't build walls around yourself and isolate yourself. Make the best of the opportunity that is available to you. So, my request to all of you is, if you have a problem, share it with me. Tell me I'm not understanding this. And if it is not possible for me to take care of that problem in the class situation, I will take care of it with a remedial class for you. Maybe a one-on-one. I'll do it. I'll do it. So please don't have an inferiority complex. Please don't feel inferior. What is great about English language? There's nothing great about it. There's nothing great about it. It's one of the most underdeveloped languages in the world. Let me quote another rock musician. Sorry about that. I'm an ancient rocker. All rock fans are somehow very old. They're like me. There's this chap called Don Henley. So there was this series of questions he was being asked, rapid fire kind of things. And he had to answer all questions either with a yes or with a no. No other answer. Yes or no. And when they came to the last question, he said, I can't answer this. And they said, why? He said, my answer to this is yes and no. And there is no word in English that conveys it. Probably German has a word like that, but I don't know the German language. That's what he said. And German is it's most definitely a more versatile language. Among all the European languages, German is more evolved. And that is because of its constantly being in touch with Sanskrit. Okay, you have, if you look at the German Enlightenment tradition, you have people like Arthur Schopenhauer, you have people like Immanuel Kant, And later on, Hegel, who consistently, who consistently studied Sanskrit texts, and Max Muller, sorry, and these people basically enrich their language. And today there is no doubt that the most versatile language in the world is Sanskrit. And Sanskrit is not only versatile, you can also make what takes about 10 lines to talk about in English, you can do that in one sentence in Sanskrit. So I don't know if you are aware of this or not, but quite a few of the new computer languages that have come into being, they take the syntax of Sanskrit, okay? Because there is brevity in it, so they take it. But I'm digressing again. So my request to any of you who is feeling that you have a problem, let me tell you, it is your right to demand that teach me till I understand. You have that right. Teach me till I understand. And like I said, if it can't be done in the class, I'll do it later. But raise the question in the class. And if you have any other problem that you'd like to share with me, you have my number. WhatsApp me. Just tell me who you are so that I'll save your number and WhatsApp me. Okay? And I suppose I have wasted most of the time today, but I wanted to do this after I was told a few things yesterday about how people are finding it a little difficult, facing a bit of a difficulty in my classes. I don't want that to happen. I really don't want that to happen. So please you can tell me what, whatever it is that you want to tell me, you can tell me. You can tell me you're the worst teacher in the world, but give me reasons and then I'll try to improve myself. If you criticize me, I'm completely open to it, but give me your reasons. Because unless you give me your reasons, I will not be able to improve myself. That's the only thing I'm asking for. So thank you for putting up with me. And remember, this is a right to education. You have a right to education. I can't speak on behalf of other teachers, but I speak for myself. There is an uncle of mine who says, when somebody says repeatedly that I don't have the time, it means that the person doesn't have the inclination. Okay? So if you really want to do something, you'll have the time. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but sometime you'll have. Day after tomorrow, Yes, you should have. Maybe you can't give 2 hours in a stretch, but you can do 2 hours over 2 or 3 days. So where there's a will, there is a way. So please share with me whatever you want. And if you're not understanding what I'm saying in class, stop me, ask me. Thank you. Now I return to Anaximander.
అమ్మ అబ్బో అదే పరి
Okay, and I was talking to you yesterday about the tendency of things to fall. What is important for you to understand? Would you mind if I take a call because this guy has COVID? I hope nothing has happened. Just a minute. Yeah, Varun, I'm in a. Okay. Um, we were talking about the tendency of the things to fall. I was trying to tell you that the way in which Anaximander was approaching this was, I'm not falling. Okay? I'm not falling. If I put a desk, that is not falling. If I put any object, that is not falling, right? Then why is it that some things have a tendency to fall? So I gave you the examples yesterday. This computer mouse, as long as I put it on the table, it's fine. My cell phone, I put it on the table, it's fine. But the moment I pick it up and let go of it, it falls. So he located the tendency to fall in the objects. And this particular, sorry, this particular idea, he was still researching, didn't get a proper answer. Okay. But later on, it was this man, Galileo. Galileo of Galilee it is, but now people just say Galileo Galilei. Uh, Galileo picked up this idea. That is the importance of the Renaissance that I was talking about. What does it mean? Revival, Renaissance is rebirth. In English, Renaissance is renaissance, which is rebirth. Nascence is birth. Okay, so it's not a birth, but it is rebirth. One day I will talk to you the main difference between Indian schools of thinking and Western schools of thinking. In India, we have no word for research. because research is searching again and again. Research. What we have is search. And what do we search? We search for the truth. And truth, I'll talk to you about that later. Anyway, so Galileo found Anaximander. He read his thoughts and his experiments on the tendency of things to fall. So, what did he do? He conducted what he called the growth of early science is like a child trying to understand things. So Galileo apparently used to throw things first. Okay. Then he realized if I hold an object and let go, it is falling right here. Okay. It is falling where it is. But if I throw this object, then it is resisting its tendency to fall with by rather not falling immediately, but by traveling for a distance before it falls. Okay, everybody has told you the story of Galileo, has how he invented the telescope. Did anyone tell you the story of the Cannonball Experiments? Anyone who knows this?
No, sir.
Okay,
No.
all right. So these were actually very important. So he decided that when he threw things, and he got others also to throw things, some people who were more powerful than him or had a more powerful arm than him, and some people who were, what should I say, who had a less powerful arm than him, and therefore, uh, basically what happened is that he ended up looking at various people throwing the same object with the same gusto, but the object not traveling the same distance. So he came up with this idea of force. Okay. I'm not going to get into the equations of what constitutes force. And as it is, my classes are terrible. I don't want to make it more terrible by getting into force, how to calculate it, and all that kind of stuff. So what he thought is let me not just use human beings. Let me use a cannon. Okay. Now he loaded the cannon with a ball or I have always been uncomfortable about this. Of different weights. Okay, not just different weight, it's also different mass. And he then also applied varying amounts of force. So the Cannonball experiments were very complicated, not as easy as people make them out to be. So what was he trying to do? He was trying to establish a correlation between weight, mass, which is volume, and force. So with this, what was he basically trying to do? He was trying to understand the relationship between weight and mass, and he was also trying to see how force got affected by that, and how these were big factors in what he called defying the tendency to fall. In defying the tendency to fall, that is what he was trying to do. Okay. In fact, are you familiar with the term escape velocity? Anyone?
Sir,
Yes, Akshay.
the
What
speed that requires a rocket to escape from the gravity of
gravity of
Earth, from the
Earth?
gravity of Earth.
So can you tell me what is the actual escape velocity, the figure?
11 kilometers per second, I hope.
Yes, right. 11 kilometers per second is what you need to break through the atmospheric layer and the gravitational pull of the Earth. So when we talk about the velocity, we are not talking about the force. It is the force with which you launch a rocket or whatever you want to launch. Okay, that force will determine the velocity. That came from Galileo. And Galileo went to Anaximander. So that is the reason why I was telling you the story. So when people wanted to know how to escape the Earth's gravity, they used Galileo's formulae. Okay, so now he was talking about the defiance, or how force makes things not fall. He was doing these experiments. While doing them, he was also busy inventing the telescope, which he did, and then told the world that the earth is not the center of the universe, but it is the sun which is the center of the universe. He showed it to people. It wasn't based in mathematical calculations. He actually demonstrated it. So the church immediately branded him heretic. Are you familiar with this word?
Yes, sir.
Who is a heretic?
Heretic.
Hmm?
I thought it is hermit.
Heretic.
Hermit.
What is heretic? I haven't heard of heretic, so tell me.
Hermit, sir.
Hermit. Oh, no. Heretic is, according to the Bible, one who is controlled by the devil or Lucifer, because this went against what was written in the Bible. And the Bible is divine revelation, so you cannot question the wisdom of God. Okay, so questioning the wisdom of God is heresy. Okay, heresy is questioning the wisdom of God, and the person who is indulging in heresy is a heretic. Right? So obviously the church decided to punish him, and punishment was with death. I would like you to read a book, please. Okay, Michel Foucault. That's how it is pronounced. He's a Frenchman. So just like we don't say Renault, it is Renault. Michel Foucault. He wrote this book called Discipline and Punish, in which there is a chapter called the spectacle of the scaffold, which is how the church publicly punished people with death, but not a simple death, tortuous death. And this was to draw compliance out of people who were skeptics. The church did not tolerate skeptics. If you were a skeptic, then you had to die. So poor Galileo had to say that I'm really sorry. I am under the influence of Lucifer or the devil or Satan. Satan actually comes from the Arabic word shaitan. It's also there in Urdu, so I'm sure you have heard of that. But in India, when we say somebody is shaitan, is almost an endearing term. It's like calling somebody a rascal. Okay, rascal in the sense that you are basically saying that somebody is, what should I say? Uh, somebody is mischievous. So people say, shaitani mat karo. Okay, but the actual Arabic meaning of shaitan is the devil. Okay, all these three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, share this. Okay, so Anglicization of shaitan is Satan, but otherwise his real name is Lucifer. Okay, anyway, so Galileo, despite being right, said I'm wrong. They spared his life, but confined him to his home because they thought he was a threat to society. Newton picked up these particular experiments, that were being conducted by Galileo, and it is through a set of calculations that he came to the conclusion that it is the earth that pulls things down. And to demonstrate it, what he did is he reversed all the things, all the assumptions that were used first by Anaximander and later by Galileo. He said, you are under the impression that the table won't fall. It's resting, right? He said, I will show you that the table also will fall. So what do? You pick up a table and let go of it. It falls, right? So all the things that he basically showed were everything has this tendency to fall, including the human being. He said, if we jump from a height, we fall. We don't stay suspended, right? So he located that tendency in the earth. And that's how, after a lot of calculations, we have the theory of gravity. It's not that apples falling, and while eating one of the fallen apples, Newton thought, how about this apple going up and not down? He didn't. That's a nice story. I don't know who made it up, but it's become a universal story. Everybody knows that story, which is completely apocryphal, wrong. Okay, so Anaximander's contributions have influenced modern science in many ways, in more ways than one. I can tell you a lot more of those things, but I'm not going to do that now because today I want to finish this Milesian thing. It's gone on long enough. And if you're reading Foucault, please also read. There will be occasion to talk about this book as well while we are doing this course. And next semester, Foucault is in the syllabus, by the way. So you should also read this book, Madness and Civilization by Michel Foucault. You should read this as well. But I ask you to read the book Discipline and Punish first so that you understand that Foucault is not only talking about one particular era, he's talking about several eras. That book ends with the systems of punishment um, developed by Jeremy Bentham, the utilitarian thinker, who invented a particular kind of a prison, which is actually called the panopticon. Okay, it's called the panopticon. So that was, where you have a central observation room, and then you have various cells in which prisoners were kept, and it was ultimately up to the people sitting in the center to keep a watch on all those people. And if they were doing something that they weren't supposed to do, then they were taken out of the cell and punished. So you read that for yourself. It'll be great. I will talk about it when we do Bentham. Anyway, so Foucault is a very, very creative kind of a thinker. What you take for granted, he questions. That's what makes him the great thinker that he is. Okay, now let's go to the third of the Milesians, who was, like I said, a younger contemporary of Anaximander. Okay, so they existed almost at the same time, both Anaximander and Anaximenes. But Anaximander was older and Anaximenes was much younger. And after the brilliance of Anaximander, Anaximenes is actually a bit of a disappointment. But having said that, I would say that one shouldn't simply write him off. Okay? One shouldn't simply write him off because he also made his own contribution, which became an important thing in modern science. With your permission, I'll just have a bit of water. I don't know, for some strange reason, my mouth is drying up. And I'm a hypochondriac. Does anyone know what an hypochondriac is? Say yes or no.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No. Nobody knows what a hypochondriac is. Okay, you should read a wonderful book. Okay, it's amazingly hilarious, but a very serious book. Okay, a hypochondriac is one who believes that he has several ailments. And though now people pronounce this as Jerome, Jerome is originally pronounced. Mr. Shiva drew some line for some reason. Good for you, Shiva. Jerome K. Jerome, sorry, what was I saying? Though it is a serious book, he puts everything in a humorous way. Hypochondria is believing that you have a disease and you start seeing symptoms of that. So, in one paragraph, you will find Jerome K. Jerome saying that, I thought I had all the diseases in the world except housemaid's knee, which means actually there is no disease called housemaid's knee. It's a very funny book, but dealing with a serious theme. So if you can get your hand on it, please read it. Many people have knocked off books from me. I've now stopped lending books. Okay, because people are just taking them, going off, never returning them. I don't even know who took what to ask people, please return my books to me. Okay, so Jerome K. Jerome talks about that. So let's forget him and get back to Anaximenes. Why is Anaximenes a disappointment? He is a disappointment because he returns to the idea of a primary substance. He returns to this idea, which was there in Thales, which, according to Anaximander, didn't exist. Okay, now Anaximenes returns to this idea. But unlike Thales, who believed that the primary substance was water and that the earth was resting in water, he talks of the primary substance as being air. Okay, now we are always told, like modern science taught us about the circulation of blood. William Harvey is the person that we talk about. And then when we talk about respiration, we say this happened in a modern period. Actually, that is untrue. When it comes to circulation of blood, it was first hinted at, hinted at. He didn't have a proper theory. It should go to, the credit should go to Theophrastus. Theophrastus was a disciple of Aristotle, and he asked himself this question: if we cut ourselves, why does blood ooze? Okay, why does it ooze and why does it keep flowing? So he said blood is not stationary in the body. Okay, it's not stationary inside the body. It seems to move in the body. Theophrastus was the one who made that statement, and he also acknowledges Aristotle in it. And William Harvey basically worked on that particular idea, and that is how we end up with the idea of circulation of blood. But the seed of that idea is in Theophrastus, and the seed of the idea of respiration is in Anaximenes. Okay, Anaximenes says he realized that we breathe in and breathe out. And he said if we stop breathing, we die. Right? So he said the primary substance is air. Okay? Because that seems to be the life-giving substance. So despite being a step back, it still has its importance, which is why we also have to talk about Anaximenes. Now, from him we also get the theories of condensation and rarefaction. Somebody quickly tell me what it is, very quickly. What is condensation and what is rarefaction? Nobody knows this? I don't believe that.
Expanding and contracting.
Is that okay? That is an applied analogy. What is actual condensation and what is actual rarefaction?
Condensation is changing of the water vapor or its gaseous form into liquid in a simple manner.
Well, condensation is the coming together of atoms or molecules. Okay? And if you put water at a certain temperature, which is below 0 degrees Celsius, the water molecules all come together and it solidifies, right? Rarefaction is rarefying or, distancing of molecules, right? So what do you do when you're heating? When you heat water, the vapor is nothing but rarefied molecules of water. But please remember that water itself is a result of the combination of two gases, oxygen and hydrogen, right? H2O. So you can see this in Anaximenes, who also goes on to say that when air condenses, it becomes water. Okay. Then he goes on to say, when water condenses, oh my God, it becomes earth. That is his theory. Now, having given a theory of condensation, he also had to give a theory of rarefaction. And for him, rarefied air is fire. For the Greeks, these are two very important things: fire, air. Okay, so you can understand the influence now of Anaximenes on molecular theory, atomic theory. Okay, and the first person to have talked about these things in detail, where he almost calls them atoms, is a person called Xenophanes. Some people say it is Xenophanes, okay, of Elia. That's not right, Elia and all that. He talked about atoms, okay, and he also, then we have this person who's very, very important, Parmenides. And Zeno, who is considered to be the first ontologist. Aristotle calls him an ontologist. Parmenides' philosophy is something that basically is the foundation of Plato's philosophy. And Xenophanes or Xenophanes is the person who talked about atoms, and he's also somebody who talked about nothingness. Again, after Anaximander, all these people talk about those things, by the way. So tomorrow we go into what we call the Pre-Socratics. And I assure you, I'm not going to take this much time as I have taken with the Milesians, because this I had to establish a few ideas. So with these, we'll move faster. But you have to do these in order to understand what Plato is talking about, what Aristotle is talking about. So thank you very much. And I hope to see you tomorrow. Please remember the things that I told you at the beginning. Approach me if you need anything. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Very kind of you. Thank you. థ్యాంక్ యూ. సునీల్ గారు, సునీల్ గారు విన్నారా నేను మాట్లాడింది?
విన్నా సార్, విన్నా సార్.
ఆ, విన్నారు కదా మీరు? తప్పకుండా
వింటున్నా సార్.
ఆహా, మీరు నేర్చుకోవాలి, ఇంగ్లీష్ వస్తుంది మీకు.
ఓకే ఓకే సార్, నేర్చుకుంటాం.
అప్రోచ్ మీ.
ఓకే
నేను మీకు చెప్తాను, ఏం ప్రాబ్లం ఉన్నా నాకు చెప్పండి.
ఓకే సార్.
రైట్, మీరే కాదు, తెలుగు మీడియం బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్, రూరల్ బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్ ఉన్న వాళ్ళందరూ.
ఓకే సార్, థ్యాంక్ యూ.
రైట్, థ్యాంక్ యూ.
థ్యాంక్ యూ.
రైట్, ఓకే.
Thank you, sir.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. థ్యాంక్ యూ వెరీ మచ్.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. Thank you very much.